Good Friday morning, and thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet Voice You Know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by Grain Equipment Company, where innovation meets execution. Also in part by Xyway brand fungicide, where you get an unfair advantage. Always read and follow the label directions. Well, looking out at the barn thermometer, we've dipped just below 30 degrees, so we are slightly below freezing, but with that wind blowing all night long, it definitely makes it feel cooler. I had hoped it might have dried things out. It is definitely a muddy mess in the barnyard. A couple quick calendar reminders and broadcast notes. First off, coming up today, the Soybean Resilience Blueprint. It's part of the Science for Success webinar series. That takes place at 1 o'clock. This is funded by your soybean checkoff dollars. To get more information and register, visit soybeanscienceforsuccess.org. Well, join us on Monday. I'll be broadcasting from Commodity Classic out in Denver, Colorado with the staff from Meristem. And then coming up on Wednesday, March the 5th, tune in to the Ohio AgNet as we'll be broadcasting from Wilmington College Aggies' 67th annual judging contest. We'll have 1,500 high school students there honing their judging skills. Taking a look at your agricultural headlines, the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, otherwise known as APHIS, is adjusting its New World's screwworm sterile fly dispersal strategy to help keep the pest out of the United States, according to a news release from APHIS. Now, the previous biological barrier was in Panama, but with the recent spread of New World screwworm cases farther north into Mexico, APHIS is shifting its dispersal efforts to the northernmost points of the outbreak in Mexico. Eradicating New World screwworm is only possible through the sterile insect technique. Iowa State's entomologist Robin Persner told DTN the logistics and efficacy of releasing sterile male New World screwworms works well, and the process has been used previously in the United States to eradicate the problem. The sterile insect technique involves sterilizing millions of male insects using ionizing radiation before releasing them into the wild to mate with wild females. As no offspring can be produced, the sterile insect technique leads to a dramatic reduction in the wild populations of the disease carrier while maintaining the use of pesticides. Since the female flies only mate once, this helps eliminate the population. APHIS said this remains the most effective strategy. The agency has identified 2 locations for sterile fly dispersal centers in Mexico. Dispersal centers outside of Mexico will continue to ensure the program continuity, and by adjusting dispersal locations, we ensure the greatest number of sterile flies are released in the critical areas, the APHIS news release said. Now, while sterile fly dispersals will shift north, APHIS will continue to work with the Nicaraguan, Honduras, and regional partners to support surveillance, animal health outreach, and early detection efforts. New World screwworm are fly larvae that infest living tissues of warm-blooded animals, causing infection, and according to APHIS, these maggots will burrow into a wound, feeding as they go, doing extensive damage by tearing the host tissues with their sharp mouth hooks. The wound becomes larger and deeper, and New World screwworm can cause serious, even deadly damage to animals. Adult screwworm flies are about the size of a common housefly with orange eyes and a metallic blue or green body and 3 dark stripes along their backs. Now, affected mammals and birds show signs of irritated behavior, head shaking, the smell of decay, evidence of fly strike, and the presence of fly larvae in those wounds. And when the first case was found in Mexico in December of 24, imports of live cattle from Mexico to the United States were halted. Imports resumed in February with strict animal health protocols prior to their entry. Well, let's take a look at your Friday morning weather forecast brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. With today's forecast, here's Joel Norwood.
Here's your ag weather forecast for Friday and the days ahead. Today will be warm but windy. Highs in the mid-50s and gusts up to 50 mile an hour across parts of the state. A wind advisory is in effect for much of western and central Ohio until 7 tonight. So secure loose objects, use caution while traveling. A few scattered showers are possible in the evening. Cold air moves in overnight, bringing weekend highs in the mid-30s and lows in the teens. Saturday will be partly cloudy, with sunshine returning Sunday to help fend off the chill. But stay warm in the meantime. Monday starts in the low 40s with sunshine before rain moves in overnight. Tuesday brings scattered showers, leading into a stormy and warm Wednesday. Highs in the mid-60s and a chance for thunderstorms. Come Thursday morning, we'll see colder air return, bringing a brief chance of snow in eastern Ohio as temps drop near freezing. Friday warms back up in the 50s with near average highs in the 40s on Saturday before another round of clouds and rain arrives after that. For the Ohio AgNet, I'm Joel Norwood.
Thanks, Joel. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more ag news after this.
Hi, I'm Greg Peterson of the Peterson Farm Brothers. If you've seen our videos, you know we're proud to be farmers. Farming can be dangerous. Never assume location or depth of underground utilities or pipelines. Before you start any work on your farm, call 811 or visit clickbeforeyoudig.com to have underground lines located. It only takes a minute and can save your life.
Never assume the location or depth of underground lines. Always call 811 or visit clickbeforeyoudig.com before you start work. A message from the Pipeline Operators for Ag Safety campaign.
Morton Buildings is holding their annual Building Value Day sales event running now through the end of February. Morton Buildings are built stronger, last longer, and look better. So if you're planning for a garage, farm shop, stall barn, a storage building for your RV, boat, or collectibles, or anything in between, act now and contact one of their 4 Ohio offices by visiting mortonbuildings.com or call 800-447-7436 to take advantage of their current savings on select new buildings. Certain restrictions may apply. This offer is available on select building styles. Contact your local construction center for more details. In other agricultural news, the USDA forecasts farmers will produce a record corn crop in 2025-26 at 15.58 billion bushels, while soybean production will also increase slightly to 4.37 billion bushels, that despite lower planted soybean acres. Now, USDA estimates farmers will plant 94 million acres of corn, that up 3.4 million acres from this past year, while soybeans planted are forecast to be 84 million acres, that actually down 3.1 million. USDA released its grains and oilseed outlook early on Thursday, offering USDA's first estimate of the 2025-26 crop year, and it releases the forecast as part of its agricultural outlook forum. Now, they peg production at 15.585 billion bushels of corn, that up 718 million bushels, with a yield estimate of 181 bushels per acre, and if that number holds, both production and yield would be record numbers. For soybeans, they estimate farmers will plant 84 million acres of beans, that down 3.1 million acres, but the yield would be up to 52.5 bushels per acre. That's a 1.8 bushel per acre increase, and that puts production at 4.37 billion bushels, up 4 million bushels from what it was in 24 and 25. Now, the USDA does expect domestic crush to increase 65 million bushels to 2.475 billion. Total domestic use will also increase 61 million bushels overall to 2.585 billion bushels. And in wheat, the wheat planted acres for 25-26 are pegged at 47 million acres, that up 900,000 acres from last year, and the average yield is set to be 50.1 bushels per acre, that actually down 1.1 bushels per acre from what it was last year. The total supply forecast to be at 2.83 billion bushels, with exports held at 850 million bushels, the same as they were this past year. Now, in his speech on Thursday, USDA Chief Economist Seth Myers said the margins for crop producers will remain tight. The recent bounce in corn prices added a little more incentive to shift acreage to corn over from soybeans. The corn to soybean price ratio is about as favorable as it has been in several years, he said. The general sentiment is we will see an increase in acres because of this very proposition, global supplies for corn or tightened carryout stocks, whereas soybeans are more abundant. Now, input prices have remained higher, Meyer noted, and this is going to put more pressure on producers, especially those who cash rent in high production states. Meyer highlighted some of the University of Illinois data showing projected gross revenue and production cost outside of land costs. Those numbers simply don't translate into profitability, he said. Now, Meyer emphasized some of the increased production in South America for several crops. Cotton, for example, produced in Brazil, is rising, and that's led to the further stagnation of U.S. cotton prices. USDA is forecasting cotton acres will fall 1.1 million acres to 9.9 million as a result. Now, on the other side of the ledger from the crops is livestock markets. Those are expected to remain strong, partially due to the smaller feed prices. Another aspect keeping prices higher, not only for beef but also dairy, is the lack of heifer retention. Now, USDA has forecast higher net farm income for 2025, but only because of the $30 billion in disaster and economic aid that was passed by Congress last December and will help producers. Otherwise, overall net cash income remains flat. Jeff Schmidt, president and CEO of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank, also spoke about the federal monetary policy. During questions, Schmidt was asked about the outlook for farm loans and distress among producers. Schmidt said the overall farm loan portfolio looks pretty good. Right now, farmers are getting approval for their new lines of credit for this crop year. This is where we go into the 2025 cycle, trying to understand where there are major cracks, and so far we're not seeing any major cracks, Schmidt said. As the ag economy has scaled back and shrunk. Farm operations have gotten a lot smaller too, so I don't know between how they hedge and how they create margin and efficiency. Both the banking system and ag industry seem to have gotten through this cycle of much tighter margins. Schmidt did add, frankly, the inflation experience in 2022-23 affected farm operators as much as anybody, but it seems like the team of bankers and producers are working through it based on what we're seeing. Stay tuned. We'll be back to take a look at your markets after this.
So many things that can have an impact on agriculture are out of the farmer's control. Yet when the weather doesn't cooperate, markets go lower, or equipment breaks down, the farmer blames themselves. Hi, I am Nathan Brown, a Highland County farmer and a member of the Ohio Farm Bureau Board of Trustees. If you or someone you know is struggling with stress on the farm, text 4HOPE to 741-741 or go visit GotYourBackOhio.org. A message from the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation.
Well, let's take a look at today's market analysis brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company. Excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Call 574-566-2113 for information on soybean marketing to LDC. Well, after a whirlwind on Wednesday, which included widespread tariff confusion in the wake of President Trump's first cabinet meeting, President Trump clarified tariff intentions early on Thursday by signaling the plan is still to go forward with a 25% tariff on both Canada and Mexico, as well as an additional 10% tariff on imports from China, and this led to a surge in the drifting U.S. dollar index, furthering the pressure on the collapsing wheat futures, which again led to an overall grain complex lower. Grain markets are also sorting through the 2025 USDA Ag Outlook Forum balance sheets for the 25-26 crop year, which included corn acreage expectations near the upper end of the analyst expectations, which along with a stout yield estimate pencils out to a record corn production in 2025-26. Now, meanwhile, the soybean complex was stronger out of the gate on Thursday, primarily to do with the moderately bullish 2025-26 outlook from the USDA, which included the lowest acreage since 2020. Now, altogether, it was an ugly day for price action for corn futures as May futures fell 12.5 cents to $4.81. May futures dropped for the fifth consecutive session and in the process pushed through support in the low 490s and quickly raced down to challenge and sink below midterm support at the 50-day moving average at 484.5 as well. Now, this is the first close below the 50-day moving average since December 5th for the May corn contract. And this is around the chart support within the low 480s, right around 482 to be more specific. Corn bulls would like to see a hold there, as a break lower would set early January consolidation areas around 460 as the target for bearish traders moving forward. The 100-day moving average also lurks in this area at 462 3/4 currently, and in fundamental news Thursday, it was almost a perfect storm of bearish developments. The largest source of pressure obviously stemming from the reconfirmation of tariffs next week against Canada and Mexico, with Mexico in particular holding a high level of trading significance as it pertains to U.S. corn. U.S. export sales for the week ended February 20 were also on the disappointing end for corn, with sales of 31.3 million bushels, that's the lowest since early January. Now in the soybean market, May bean futures closed down 4 cents to 10.37 1/4 on Thursday. Soybean futures were firmer out of the gate, finding strength on a moderately bullish USDA outlook, but strength faded through the session on tariff concerns as well as spillover weakness from that heavily lower corn and wheat market. In a bearish technical development, May prices failed to hold support at the 50-day moving average near 1038.5. The 100-day moving average of 1032 weights just a nickel to the downside as the next round of chart support. In soybean fundamentals, weekly export sales of 15.1 million bushels, those were slightly lower than the previous week, but overall steady with what should be expected for this time of year's marketing season, and shipments showed an uptick, which added in keeping the current marketing year commitment on pace at 14% above what it was in 23-24, with the USDA estimating exports at 8% higher year over year currently. Now, looking specifically at how the markets closed, May corn was down 12.5 cents and July corn was down 11 3/4, while May soybeans closed down 4 cents and July soybeans were down 4 1/4 cents. May Chicago wheat was down 17 1/4 cents. Taking a look now at the overnight trade brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. March corn is trading up 2 1/4 cents at $4.67. March soybeans are up 7 1/4 at $10.30, and wheat for March up 2 1/2 4.5 cents, $5.49 1/4. On the livestock side, live cattle and feeder cattle ended the day higher, lean hogs were lower. Thanks for joining us. You're listening to the Ohio AgNet.